Right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Georgia Tech Manufacturing Institute's Lunch and Learn lecture series. My name is Dr. Billy D. Brown. I'm a senior research faculty and education and workforce development director with GTMI. I'm excited to continue hosting this series and encourage you to please spread the word so that we can grow our audience and network and provide value to the GTMI community. Before I introduce today's speaker, I'll just first introduce GTMI and provide some instructions for the audience. GTMI is one of 10 Georgia Tech interdisciplinary research institutes that uniquely focuses on manufacturing research, development, and deployment. We help tackle the grand challenges of today's manufacturers and assist partners in moving innovations from the lab to the market. GTMI has a wide variety of facilities and equipment located on main campus for basic research, as well as nearby on 14th Street for more applied research in our advanced manufacturing pilot facility. GTMI's mission includes education and workforce training, collaborative partnerships with industry, academia, and government, as well as thought leadership. GTMI's AMPF is the headquarters for a groundbreaking initiative called Georgia AIM, or AI Manufacturing Technology Corridor. This is funded by a recent Build Back Better EDA grant worth up to $80 million. Georgia AIM is expected to profoundly impact Georgia and the nation's economy through equitable development, deployment, and talent innovation in artificial intelligence for all manufacturing sectors. The AMPF currently has state-of-the-art equipment in metal additive and hybrid manufacturing, and is currently expanding and transforming into a demo facility for automated smart factories that incorporate IoT, AI, digital, and robotic manufacturing technology. So our talk today is actually going to be relevant to AI and IoT as well. And just before I introduce the speaker, I want to give some brief instructions. So we have a lunch and learn each semester, series each semester. These sessions are excellent opportunities for Georgia Tech faculty, undergraduate, graduate level students and researchers, as well as the global manufacturing community to learn and share advanced manufacturing knowledge. Today is our third lecture for the fall semester. We're both in person and streaming online via Zoom. We want these sessions to be interactive, so we will address questions either during or after the presentation. If you're online, feel free to put your questions in the chat box, and we will also address those. All right. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Connor Offutt, who will discuss how reality capture technology is revolutionizing manufacturing. Connor is the CEO of Aetos Imaging, an ATDC company here in Tech Square. Connor not only shapes the direction of Aetos, but also nurtures its culture and assembles a team of unmatched talent. When he's not driving Aetos to new heights, Connor is on the tennis court, mastering his disc golf and participating in local events, inspiring his sons. How many sons do you have?
I have 3 sons, 8, 6, and 5.
Wow.
Yeah, no boring days for me.
Keeps you busy. In the following presentation, Connor will provide deeper insight into how his company is leveraging cutting-edge reality capture technology to help foster a safer, more efficient workforce. From the ups and downs of growing a venture-backed startup to the vision of how manufacturing is evolving in a rapidly changing environment, this presentation will be sure to enhance your understanding of the current state of the art in the industry. All right, Connor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's quite the introduction.
Sir.
All right. So let's see. Get a couple people in attendance here online. Just maybe could I just get a quick pulse here of just what some of the majors are? I know we have silicon manufacturing. What are some of the other points of study, just so I have some context here? I'd love to maybe just go around. What you got? Electrical. Okay, fantastic. Electrical. Anybody else? Anything else? Anybody in facilities or equipment? Manufacturing, yeah.
System engineering.
System engineering, okay, fantastic.
Minor in manufacturing, but electrical.
Fantastic, very cool. You guys are in for a treat today. And then in the chat, just maybe drop your major, your point of study here. So there's a couple of things that I find ironic about today's presentation. So First off, I dropped out of college after 1 year, so here I am, 10 years later, educating on the subject. So, take everything I say with somewhat of a grain of salt. Really got directly into the whole running a company, doing the startup, and trying to appease the venture capitalists of the world. Seems to be my status quo these days. So, but I've been able to learn a tremendous amount about manufacturing, how the world works, and really just have developed a deep appreciation for the people that actually run it. I think a lot of times we can sit behind our computers and draw things up and put things into a plan, and then you go to these facilities and it takes a whole mini army to actually run the operation, right? And that's everything from maintaining the equipment, putting everything together, managing the change, and all that kind of stuff. And so, those are the people that we serve at Aetos in our company, and those are the people whose lives we're trying to make better. So I assume, based on just kind of some of those answers, you guys are really heavily interested in, how to make manufacturing breakthroughs, how to build new things. What I'm hopefully going to give you guys some perspective on today is the backside of that. How do you actually manage the facility or the building and the equipment that actually makes all this possible? We'll be doing some show and tell, and showing off some of our really cool technology as well. So that's a little bit of a preface for today's meeting. So let's see. It's gone. There we go. So facility management. Facility management is really like this whole category of what it takes to actually run not just the building, but all of the equipment inside of the building as well, right? So again, you have manufacturing facilities. In that, you've got valves, you've got HVAC, you've got pumps, you've got electrical, you've got all this throughput, you've got the actual manufacturing equipment. And so that usually falls on to somebody called a plant manager or a facility director or something like that, right? And so this whole space is what we focus on as a company. Like I said, the backside of everything. And so the interesting thing about this world is, fewer and fewer people are graduating with technical degrees, and there's fewer people that want to actually go out and maintain things hands-on. And more people are graduating with computer science degrees, electrical degrees, all this kind of stuff. So there's a pretty big gap in the labor market for those that actually go out and work on this type of equipment. So if you ask these plant managers, gosh, what are you doing with this overabundance of all these resumes that are trying to apply to work at your facility? They're going to laugh at my face, because that's just not the case. So they're all being tasked to do more with less people. And they're also saying, hey, we want to go and build this vision of Industry 4.0. So who here's heard of Industry 4.0, that buzzword? Yeah? Okay. So things like IoT, we will need better automation, we need more process, we need to train faster, right? I kind of lump all these things into what everybody is trying to get to at some point in the future in order to get more efficiency out of their manufacturing production facility. And so here you have this whole kind of wave, less people, but also trying to digitize and improve everything. And this is quite the recipe for a change and very Herculean task that these guys are being tasked with. So we've boiled it down to 3 fundamental problems that we're trying to address in the market. And this is 1, disconnected system. So let's see, CMMS, BAS, IoT, ERP. Raise your hand if you know at least what 2 out of those 4 mean. Okay, so CMMS, computerized maintenance management systems, the systems that actually issue out the work orders, the tickets to say, hey, I need this technician to go do a air filter change on this piece of equipment tomorrow. That's done through a CMMS system. IoT, okay, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? You should all know what that is. Internet of Things, but that's the live sensor data coming out of the equipment. You've got your BAS, building automation or system automation system, which is to say, what are the inputs and how do I actually affect the controls of the equipment to say, I need to be running this pump at a slightly higher frequency because the time of day is this. And so I should set the set point of my facility to this. And how do I actually control those mechanisms? And then you have ERP, which is sort of, well, it's really like all the other stuff. Everything else to run the company, right? So there's a bunch of other, things like HR management, things like procurement, supply chain logistics, all those things, right? Usually get thrown into that ERP category. So you can imagine, right? It's like, gosh, there's all these disparate systems out there, and yet I've got to interface with all of them. And so how do I bring it all together in order to actually make sense of the operations and actually act on the data that I have? Then you have lack of visual context. Now I say this is like, think of it from the perspective of, I'm a COO of a manufacturing facility or a manufacturing company, and I've got 55 locations across the United States and globally, right? How the heck do I know what's there, right? How do I get an insight? You'll find that these people do a lot of traveling. I'm going to fly over here. Let's see over here. What does this space look like, right? And so the problem is there's really not a ton of visual context for the current state, the current representation of these facilities. Now, who here, raise your hand if you've heard of a digital twin. Okay, fantastic. So a digital twin is usually a rendering, right? An abstraction of reality that's based on some CAD data, BIM data, something like that. What the problem with digital twin is, it's wrong as soon as it's done. So as soon as the building gets built, your digital twin is no longer accurate because the contractor accidentally installed that pump over here and that beam didn't actually go there. And by the way, there's a hose running through your roof for some reason, I don't know. And so this is the real world. In the real world, this perfect 3D model of what your building is supposed to be is never the actual thing. And so this is what I mean when there's a lack of visual context. We have all this simulation software, digital twin technology, but it's usually wrong. And it's usually not a perfect representation of what's actually there. And then finally, to put all this together, you'd be shocked to see how many people still train on pen and paper, apprenticeship. Hey, here's your training manual, 45 pages. They're like, yeah, I'm not reading this shit. So, and then they're like, they go through, they do some hands-on training, and then, 3 months later, they may or may not know what they're doing. And so the current state of training and how do we actually onboard the workforce to operate at this facility is really outdated. So these are kind of like the core things that we at Aetos are trying to be solving. And by the way, we're a venture-backed company now. We're in our 4th year of being in the whole startup world, and are growing 14 full-time team members this year, and are trying to take that to about 30 in the next 6 months. So we're rapidly on the rise and clearly doing something fairly right here. So just a little bit deeper context on some of this stuff. One of the other things that emerges here is a lack of centralized asset information repository, right? So you might have, okay, I've got this data over here of what I have, and then I'm using this checklist over here, and then it's not actually correct, right? So how do I actually make sure that the source of truth, the data that I have, like think about it from this perspective, right? That COO is trying to make a decision of where are we doing well, what are we doing poorly? And in order to do that, you need data. So you need to actually have all of the asset information across your entire business, and it needs to be accurate. This is not an easy problem to solve, guys. It's actually a really hard problem to solve. There's limited visibility into asset health. Is this chiller about to break? When is this piece of equipment going offline? Right? How is it actually doing? Okay, here's my IoT data. Is that IoT data actually feeding properly where I can make meaningful decisions? That leads into data-driven insights, training and onboarding, manual paper-based processes. I just talked about some of these, right? And so, like, to kind of sum it all up, what you really have is a problem where what I call tribal knowledge. And that is, if you talk to the guy that's been at that plant for 30 years, and let's be honest, most of the world and most of our economy still runs on facilities and plants that were built 30 years ago, right? Go just drive up and down Dalton, Georgia, Jasper, et cetera. It's not all high-tech, fancy sunshine and rainbows, right? Who was it? Elon installed a bunch of robots and realized we still need people, right? So we're getting there, but we still have some ways to go. So you could say that the whole problem is summed up by tribal knowledge. You have these guys that are been there doing it for 20, 25 years. maybe they know 80% of everything that's going on. How do you download that information into the new generation so that you don't have this loss of process? Because it's a lie to say that everything just keeps running, right? Sometimes we used to do it better. And in some ways we're trying to improve, but you have to download and actually migrate that information from one generation to the next, right? So that's kind of part of what we're going to start. So I mentioned CMMS because we at Aetos care a lot about CMMS. This is kind of like the nervous system by which they actually run these facilities and keep things moving. So CMMS stands for Computerized Maintenance Management Software. And you can imagine back in the 90s when things were all pen and paper, every checklist, right? What you do on everything from changing an air filter to this valve is, losing pressure to, all this detail is all on paper. And then somebody comes along and says, hey, Excel exists. And let's turn Excel into a software application. We'll call it CMMS, and you can now track all this stuff digitally. You could go through your checklist online or on the cloud. And this is a whole revolution to the manufacturing and facility management world. Because now you could get this data out of the paper and into the cloud, and you can actually start to really make meaningful decisions. So I call this like Gen 1 of where this is actually heading. And Aetos, we're trying to build the next evolution of a CMMS, which we so aptly named a VMMS, a visual maintenance management software. So we'll go into this in a second. So actually, I was walking in here, I was like, oh, this seems familiar. Like this is the kind of environments that I'm in all the time. And so let's just imagine, put yourself in their shoes. You're a technician, you've been working for 3 months, you're barely getting your feet wet, you just passed your safety compliance, so you're technically not gonna sue your boss if something goes bad. And then somebody gives you a work order. And they say, okay, you need to go fix the AMF yeast refrigerator compressor. Yeah, it's a high priority. Good luck. That's your work order. And you're like, ooh, yeah, let me just go find that real quick here. Sure, that sounds like a good idea. Do you see the problem? The problem is, where the heck is that yeast refrigerator compressor? And how do I find it? And what ends up happening is you guys spend 2 hours trying to locate that thing, and then they may or may not know what to do when they get there. That's the problem, right? And so we at Aetos are trying to change how this is done. And I'll go back to that slide in a second, but for us, VMMS is take that existing process, but equip it with the visual process or visual environment, visual context, and now reinvent these 5 categories of how things are done. Training, asset management, maintenance, especially predictive maintenance with IoT, work orders, and virtual inspections. So now hopefully nothing breaks, and I'll show you guys like somewhat of a live demo of this stuff. Because PowerPoints are cool, but the real stuff is way cooler. Okay, so hopefully I've got everybody's attention. What can this actually look like? I'm just going to show you guys a little show and tell. So first off, and let me just emphasize, like, I did not invent 3D scanning. Okay, so what you're seeing here is not, oh, this Connor guy, this is a whole new imaging software. As a matter of fact, who here has seen the Candida building virtual tour? Has anybody been through the virtual tour of the Candida building? You should, it's awesome. It's actually really incredible. So who's been on Zillow and looked through a virtual tour online of some real estate listing? Okay, great. Look, same basic technology, right? At the core. Take a camera on a tripod, go scan a facility, and you've got a Google Street View for the inside of your manufacturing facility, right? But for us, that piece alone is not enough. How do you actually take it to the next level and build a CMMS on top of this visual content? The first thing I'm going to show you guys is, okay, wow, we can have an entire 3D rendering of a facility running on the cloud with 3G connection on any device. That's pretty damn cool. That was not possible 2 years ago, by the way. So these files used to be terabytes. and they're now getting to the point where you actually run these things on a browser and you're getting access to this kind of information in real time, this is a really big game changer for what this enables downstream, right? So I can say, okay, anywhere in my facility, I can double click, jump in and say, you know, where am I? What's going on here? Somebody needs to fire the janitor, right? So, and then the cool thing with us is I can actually jump through all of my assets, get a real-time picture of where these things are, and start to collect all this information, right? So now when my boss calls me up and say, hey, what's going on with that generator? I don't know, do we have space to put another, you know, valve on there? Well, hey, let's take a look. Let's jump on this visual representation and see if that's actually a possibility. Hey, when was this installed? What's the current condition? Okay, well, that's all right here. Gosh, let's look at another example here and say, I'm gonna go to my Baycon Drive 4 here, one of my favorite little demo examples. What's the real-time reading of this device right now? And as you notice, this is all mock data. I'm not actually showing our clients real data. This is our demo environment. So what you can see here is we actually now have the ability to pull in live IoT data onto the device with the visual context and say, voltage is running a little hot. We need somebody to go take a look at that. And then I say, all right, I'm gonna actually create a work order here. I'm gonna call it an inspection. I'm gonna assign it to Ada Wong, which is our dev's name for, you know, what they set up all of our accounts with. And then I'm gonna save that. So now Ada Wong, not a real person, by the way, but you know, a little bit humor. You guys are allowed to laugh, right? Ada Wong gets a notification on their phone. They say, oh shoot, Baycon Drive 4 is running hot. Where is that? I know exactly where to go. 2 hours saved, right? That whole 2-hour mess of where the heck is the valve, gone. Now they have all this visual context for everything that they do. So this is, I'm trying to show you guys where all this is headed. Oh, and then by the way, while I'm here, I need to open up my manual to understand exactly what this device has. I need to maybe look up some of the specifications. Fantastic. All that context is here, right? And this is all running on the cloud. No application. I didn't download anything. And this literally runs like on 3G connection. So it's really lightweight and highly performant. So this is really where we're trying to take the industry and change the game of manufacturing, because at the end of the day, you can have the coolest design. If the equipment that actually produces that gear, that chip, that whatever it is, shuts down, you don't make money. And trust me, these guys are in the business of making money, right? And so downtime is the killer to EBITDA and to profitability at these organizations. So everything that we can do to make sure that their staff is running as efficiently as possible is super, super important for us to do. I'll show you a couple other things. So now let's imagine you've got a bunch of buildings, right? So I've got a couple of examples here, everything from some Class A commercial office, a Delta plan, and these different things. But let's say you're trying to consolidate this information across your entire portfolio. And you're trying to see, okay, let's look at all of our electrical equipment across an entire, you know, slew of different locations and assets. I need to look at this particular disconnect switch at the Coda building. Who here knows where the Coda building is? Yeah, so that's one of our clients. So they happen to be pretty tech enabled, so it's pretty fun. So bam, pull that up. You're immediately there. You understand what you're looking at. You can look at the notes and everything's there. So you're consolidating all that asset information visually, accurately across an entire portfolio. You can start to see where this whole game is headed, right? And then finally, because I like to do hard things, even though it makes me work a lot and not sleep very much, we also built a whole training module inside of Aetos, where we can actually build bespoke training courses. Actually, I do have a little audio, so we'll see if it works. You can build bespoke courses and get people onboarded and trained on exactly site-specific operations before they even start. So here, this building, one steam trap. Who here knows what a steam trap is? Raise your hand if you know what a steam trap is. Okay, So a steam trap is a pressure gauge mechanism. It's like a valve, and it's dynamically releasing steam depending on the pressure of the overall system. And so, as I'm probably showing my lack of expertise, so Steve would kill me. Long story short, New York still runs on steam. This is a 2 million square foot facility off of Times Square in Manhattan. Okay, and so their utility bill is about $3 million a year, just on energy and steam alone, right? One steam trap, if it's just blowing off steam, can cost $5,000 to $10,000 a month. So they have like 117 of these per building. So for them, if you miss one and you don't identify it early, you're just bleeding money, right? So for these guys, gosh, and I know this isn't manufacturing exactly, but these are still the same types of examples for all these different use cases, right? So for these guys, it was super important for them to train their staff on, hey, how do we actually identify these, fix these, so that we stop bleeding money because it's really expensive. So we took the best experts, we came in, took out the iPhone videos and started to train some courses, but now we have this visual context of where we are in the building.
Chief Engineer at 11 Madison
I'm
Avenue.
necessarily the best actor, but
We're here to talk about the steam systems at 11 Madison Avenue, and we brought Steve Mastos from Mastos Tech to give you an overview of how the building operates its steam systems.
Thanks, Ron. Hi, I'm Steve Masto from Masto Tech, and today we're going to talk about the steam system, where the steam comes from. It comes from Con Ed in the street. Again, Con Ed is the largest district steam system in the world, and New York City was built using that. Have a hole in the basement, it comes in, and it heats a building like 11 Madison, a square block, millions of square feet, and these are Class A buildings that use steam to heat, and in our case, we also have a steam chiller, as many of you do. So we're going to talk about how the steam should be distributed, what's the best way to do it, what kind of insulation we're going to need, how we remove condensate properly, and how we control steam pressures to optimize the way steam is used in the building. We're also going to talk a little bit about how...
So this makes sense, right? Video, text, all this kind of stuff. But what if we can take that same process and now actually walk them through the site-specific procedures at their own building to navigate them through exactly how to do this stuff. So it takes this sort of a passive learning and turns it into active learning, where they're truly being ingratiated into how things are done at their facility.
All right, we're down.
And then of course we quiz them, then we submit that, and then they have, quiz questions on all this, there's reporting, and then, they get fired if they don't pass the test. I mean, I'm just kidding, they actually.
All right.
And so, tough crowd today, usually go on. So you kind of see
All right, so we're here,
what we're doing, and I promise I'm not trying to just like show off our company, but it's we really care a lot about this stuff and what we've been trying to build in order to actually create this next visual layer of how to actually manage all these facilities. And so coming back to my nifty presentation here, I'll just go over a couple more things and I'll turn it over to QA. What's the F11, right? Where's the, who's got me on the full screen? Yeah, what is?
Yeah,
You got it? Yep. I was on. It's hard to see from this thing. Okay, perfect. Okay. So just a little bit of sort of general education around this type of stuff. I think it'd be helpful for you guys to understand. So again, this is my take. I didn't pull this from a textbook. You guys heard how that went for me the first time. This is just kind of my state of the world and how things are, right? So I kind of lump it into three big categories. There's drone and aerial photography, there's 3D imaging, and then there's 3D scanning. The difference between scanning and imaging being, scanning is actually giving you LiDAR, point cloud precision, sub-millimeter precision. Imaging is capturing 360 photos, right? Now, the cool thing about what I just showed you, it's actually a combination of both LiDAR and imaging. So you're getting the depth data, you're getting the measurement accuracy, you're also getting the high resolution photogrammetry. And then of course you've got drones that do all this stuff as well. Now there's benefits and pros and cons to each. So the scanning size, gosh, super accurate. You can do massive scans like cities, whole topographies, but it's really heavy from a file size perspective. You're not going to run that on a phone, on a browser. You're going to download that to your PC. You're going to do big renderings on it, right? Stuff like that. The imaging side is really lightweight. It's great for online applications. But you don't get measurement accuracy. And there's still some drawbacks to scope and scale there and how to actually pull that together. So that's why we use essentially a hybrid of both the best parts of scanning to about 1/4 of an inch, and then imagery that is as high end as we can push it without breaking the bandwidth on the phone. And then of course you've got drones, players like DJI, Skydio. You've got sort of these reconnaissance types of environments where you can actually, go and scan from the air, do things like thermal imagery as well, to get all that data. And we're like super big fans of all this stuff. We're just trying to figure out how to actually build a software application that is solving for the greatest set of problems in the most scalable way, because scaling a company is really freaking hard. Because a lot of what we do involves, we actually got to go out there and do the capture process. So that's where the VCs don't like us as much, because we're not like Canva or one of these like click to buy online. You never have to sell anything or actually do anything in the real world. It's like just straight profit. Oh, that must be nice. We actually have to go like scan stuff and do real world stuff. And so, we've got the software stack, but it makes the company difficulty pretty high in terms of how to scale and execute there. So that's my problem to solve though, not yours. Let's see, what else? Integration, right? I talked about all those disparate systems. This is really where it really comes together, because if you're a walled garden just sort of on your own in any kind of software application, nobody's really building it this way, you're toast, because you've got to be able to talk to everything else that's out there. And more, like, who here knows what an API is? Please tell me you know what an API is. Application programming interface, right? So you've got to be able to connect data from multiple different systems. If your data is on an island by itself, everybody hates you, because then I got to put the information in here, then I got to put it in over here. They didn't talk to each other, but I already did it over here. It's like, no, you didn't. It's not in the right system, right? So you got to connect and plug everything in. It'd be like a circuit, like an electrical circuit that isn't connected to the overall system, right? It's ridiculous. And so part of what we do and spend a copious amount of our time actually working on is pulling in the IoT, maybe even augmenting their existing CMMS, taking that 3D scan and actually connecting it with the reality, and then integrating with their ERP system like SAP or JD Edwards or whatever that may be. And so what we really want to build here is that visual pane of glass that brings everything in together, that actually gives real world workforce operational value. Cool. Yeah, we have an ROI. It makes things better. Cool. And that's really all I got for you guys today. So I hope that was helpful, and yeah, let's turn it over to some questions. So I'm gonna open the book.
Any questions?
Good.
What's it take to update your visual models? Like, if you add that valve you're talking about, do you have to rescan the facility?
Yeah, 100%. So that is usually what we do. So interestingly enough, small, like let's say I just updated a cabinet here, you can actually do that with your phone and get an updated thing there. So it actually puts the update in the hands of the users. In terms of, I just rebuilt my entire factory and changed out a lot of the equipment. Yeah, you got to go rescan. And it's a big barrier. It's something that we're trying to figure out. My theory on this whole thing is that the cost to scan is following something like Moore's Law right now. And so this trend, it's going to get easier and easier and easier to capture reality. So I think this becomes a lot less of a problem over time. But yeah, fundamentally, that's why we target very big stationary environments. So for us, like something like a distribution center would be a terrible idea where there's a bunch of moving pieces all the time, but fantastic question. You had one over there?
Yeah, thank you so much for a great presentation.
Thank you.
I really like how you are using 3D 60 walkthrough technology.
Yeah.
On your case. So my research area is VR and AI.
Yeah.
Using virtual augmented reality for test and train.
Perfect.
In the early stage of the design. So the question I have The first one, how are you able to evaluate your educational platform? That is some, for me, is educational platform. How you guys creating your curriculum? Okay, and how you test it, you know, and how you evaluate it. And the second one is the future. Are you going to use virtual reality, for example, to train the people on the digital model, not the digital twin? Do you have the idea to move to that area and using this kind of 360 picture, putting on the virtual immersive environment to train the people instead of the web application type of the platform?
Great question. I'll take them one at a time. So first off, in terms of, I think your first one is who builds the content, and then how do you measure its efficacy, right? So the content, great news there, already exists. It's called training manuals, standard operating procedures. It's everything that they already have that's on paper or some, you know, non-visual format. So a lot of the work that we do is we take that manual that articulates a 17-step process on how to start this massive piece of equipment properly, and we go and we digitize that process. So we help them get started with that, and then eventually they end up creating their own content and building it directly there. So that's on the creation. In terms of governance, well, ultimately it shows up in onboarding time and reduction of that, right? So how this, trust me, this is very well documented because they pay a lot of money on, you know, training a new employee, so that companies will know pretty precisely how much it costs them to onboard a new mechanic, a new technician, et cetera. And, you know, at what point are they ready to be responsible and go out and do their job, right? So if we can hit that line item on their evaluation, where it goes from 6 months to 3 months or 3 months to 2 months, then that's a huge win for us. And then obviously things like reporting and giving them the data of who passed what. So that's also really important there. So I hope that answers your question on those two. Great questions. And then on the AR, VR. So I love VR. I bought DK1 way back before it was cool. You know, it's a passion project of mine. I'm going to be all over the Quest 3 and the Vision Pro as they come out. However, as much as I'm a fan of these, you just don't see people wearing headsets at these manufacturing facilities on a regular daily basis right now, right? We haven't crossed the ubiquity threshold yet, where it's not in the form factor where it's just convenient to get them in the day every single point. So where do I see it going first? It's going to be right here. It's going to be, let me just pull out my camera and then get the information that I need and have that sort of augmented reality layer of the world that I'm seeing through the thing that everybody already has. Again, I hope I'm not, you know, making anybody upset, but this is just my hypothesis here. So this is first, and then as the glasses and wearables and these things get better, we're going to sort of transcend that barrier. But no doubt, in order to even make that possible, we're very well aware that we're building that database, if you will. And it's basically just a switch for us. So, you know, if we wanted to just turn on AR and spend the, you know, time to go develop that and actually implement it, we could do that at any moment. So we're just kind of waiting for that that threshold to be crossed. But fantastic question again. Anybody else?
I was just to follow on to that. I was thinking there's other companies that are doing that currently, the AR and VR. So do you work with those companies, or are you planning to in the future maybe?
When the market talks, we'll respond. So if somebody wants to give me a $2 million contract to integrate with HoloLens or something like that, sign me up. But until the contract size and it's moving the market, you know, we're trying to solve things as pragmatically as possible. Here's the other thing, guys. Like, y'all are like 140 plus IQ people here in this room. You're not the ICP that actually runs these buildings, right? A lot of these guys, they are like barely getting on to using apps on their phone. They're not tech savvy people in terms of the people that are actually running these facilities on a day-to-day basis, right? So part of what you guys have to do is take kind of your world and just think about it in the lens of the guys that are doing this day in, day out. they don't have time to, go in front of the computer and do all this. They're trying to fix stuff, real stuff, right? Like I said, those are like my favorite types of people. And so you got to make sure that the technology barrier isn't so high that they've got to learn a whole new set of skills, how to operate some complicated device in addition to just doing their jobs. And so I think that's a big piece too, but it is getting there. It is absolutely getting there. I just don't think we're quite there yet to see mass adoption of, HoloLens, AR, VR type of applications. Hopefully I don't get in trouble. Go ahead.
I had a question. So when you get a new client, you probably have to have a team of people to interface with them to meet what they need.
Yes.
What's your average team size that you need to help accomplish implementing the system?
Fantastic question. That's a really good question. So we have a whole department within Aetos called delivery. And that has, just to give you an idea, like I said, so you have the sort of director of delivery, and he oversees systems of process across everything from the client says, yes, I want to do this, to they've been successfully implemented. You have the tagging team, or the scanning team, sorry, which is I need to now go send contractors. For example, we just closed Chevron, and we've got 55 of their locations across the United States. We got to go scan 55 locations across the United States. That means contractors out in the world. That means there's somebody managing and deploying those field service logistics, right? So you have to actually go out and do all that. Then you have to tag and label. So now we're phase 2, which is visually identifying and labeling all the equipment, migrating all the data. Then you have systems integration, right? And then you have so those are the big 3. And then we have a project manager that sits on top of all of that to actually fulfill that. So think of that as project manager plays quarterback, and they're managing the step change from one to the next of the scanning, the tagging, and then the application delivery. So those are the 3. Really, it's like a 4-person team, but that project manager oversees the project. Those guys are doing 100, 200, 400 projects at a time, but they're specialists within that distribution. So it's almost like our own manufacturing line of how to get these projects online with these specific functions that need to come online and tapped into over time. But it's a beast, but it's a lot of fun.
Are you looking for new talent? Are you?
Yeah, I was gonna say I need some resumes here. Go ahead and come and apply. We're always looking for new talent. Seriously. Internships this summer and I know you guys are mostly grad students though, right? So probably looking for actual employment. So yeah, please submit your resumes. Definitely, we're always interested. If this is even at all, a curiosity driver for you guys, we have a pretty tough hiring process, but if you can make it in, we're really changing how the game is played. So. Yeah, go ahead.
I have one question here. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It's pretty cool. So as you mentioned, you have many different modules in your system.
Mhm.
Would you say who's the ideal customer in your mind? Right? Like, do you find a unified pain points across these customers? Are they looking for training resources? What are they looking?
Gosh, you got a business sense, not just an engineering sense, don't you? It's a great question. So we chart this on a graph internally. When we go through our pipeline, right? We go out, prospect the world. We actually chart things on a graph. And the graph is something like available budget and then usefulness of the product. And then we have all these metrics and variables for usefulness of the project or usefulness of the product. And the common denominator is how much money have they invested into their equipment on a per square foot basis. That's like kind of the North Star indicator of whether or not we're going to have a lot of success there. So if there's a $100 million worth of equipment in a $500,000 square foot location that takes 30 engineers to manage, bingo, that's our target. And so it's less about this industry, what we're finding at least. It's less about, okay, this or that specifically. It's more about those variables that factor into it. And then, learning how to sell into that market. So there's definitely, utilities, industrial, manufacturing, a subset of that, things like, even data centers, so oil and gas. These are some of the big, markets that we're targeting as far as the industries, but they always have to have those same things in common.
So just to follow up on that, I guess in that sense, most of the small and medium-sized manufacturers are not gonna be your ideal customers.
So in that case, we need to see volume. So if, and homogeny in the type of asset. So what I mean is if it's, 20, 50,000 square foot manufacturing facilities that all look super different and are gonna have a totally different process to onboard across each one. That's tough. That's really tough. But if it's 20 that all are more or less the same and we can take the same blueprint and replicate it across all 20, that starts to look a lot better. Because we have to look at the implementation scope and how difficult it's going to be to onboard the client. And then, what is the budget? How much are they going to pay for it? And then sort of make those decisions of prioritization around that.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic question. Love to see the business side as well.
Just out of curiosity, where did the name Aetos come from?
Anybody know? Was it Greek for anybody? I'll give you a hint. Look at the logo. It's an eye. It's an eagle. It's an eagle eye. Because we're scanning the world. So yeah, Greek for eagle. One of our co-founders was Greek. So the Aetos.com was bought though. We need to go buy it off. So that's why we're Aetos Imaging. We'll see. That's big enough and we'll go buy the domain from them. So. Any other questions? Anything from online, from the chat?
No questions.
They're probably,
Wait, hold on. There's a question. LiDAR drone is on, I'm just gonna read the way it was written. LiDAR drone is on market. How would you view the future of LiDAR drone in facility management and maintenance? And do you think your company will acquire this equipment?
ooh, okay. I think I understand what the question is asking. So if you guys want like a fun side project, go Google or go to LinkedIn and search Gaussian Splat, Gaussian. It's a real term. There's a big paper on this. Splat, SPLAT. Super interesting where some of this stuff is heading. Or NERF is the simpler version of this. NERF. So there's some really cool things happening with artificial intelligence, large language. It's not really artificial. Large models, machine learning models that can take video data and turn it into actual a 3D model by essentially predicting the pixel location of each thing. It's really, really fascinating. And then they're splatting this across a Gaussian. Okay, so now we're getting really tight. I mean, this is a really cool paper. It's awesome. I geek out over this kind of stuff. So to go to the answer to this question, I think that where it's all headed is something to the effect of, I just need a 360 video and I can just walk my campus and it'll build the model. And I'm not going to need LiDAR, similar to like vision, I think can get us everything that we actually need just with video data. And then as that happens, okay, Tesla starts to crack full self-driving, and then you have the robot that pulls out of the frunk that just goes and scans the thing, and there's no human in the loop, and you can start to see how this whole thing can start to spiral. And I see a world not too far off where essentially everything in the world will be captured, and it's just how much lag, and then that lag will just start to go down until it's actually real time. And so at some point, I don't know if it's 5 years, 25 years, but the state of the real world will be known in digital space down to a pixel at some point. And we're just following that trend. So I went real deep on you guys there, but it's freaking happening. And then in terms of acquiring the hardware, yeah, definitely have thought about it. We like to be agnostic in the sense that I don't have the time or energy to go compete against DJI and Matterport and all these other scanning companies. I'm really focused on the software. And so I'd rather be open, pay them a little bit of money, but be open to all these different types of inputs. So that we're not, stuck in a certain hardware stack, if you will. That would limit us. Now, caveat, if we can crack that whole computer spatial intelligence stack and solve that better than anybody else, where the input is video, great, then the hardware is obsolete. And then it's just who's got a video, and we all know how much that costs. It's like basically free these days. So yeah, really interesting.
I got a quick question. It can be difficult, I guess, to convince manufacturers, right, to adopt new technology. So I'm just curious about what are some of your challenges with trying to get folks to adopt this technology?
Yeah. It's a good question. I would say, unironically, one of the biggest challenges early is I didn't know how much I didn't know about sales. And when you're selling to an enterprise, you're not just selling to one person that's like, oh, great idea, I totally get this is gonna make sense. Like the plant manager, every time we show this to the plant manager, they're like, holy cow, this is amazing, I need this in my life. And then they gotta go talk to the CFO, and then they gotta talk to their controller, and then there's a VP of ops, and then their cyber team says like, hey, what's your security like? And so, it's hard. And then, oh, by the way, there's legal, and you got to go through the contracting process, and you got to make sure that your contract agreement and their SaaS agreement, it's all. So yeah, what is hard? Selling an enterprise, being all of our ducks in a row, all of our contract needs to be perfect, all of our security needs to be perfect. We need to have a depth of features that they expect out of an enterprise SaaS application. And so, just the sheer, we're doing really well, but we're not Microsoft. So, we're doing our best. It's hard. That's why I have to work like literally 80 to 100 hours a week to just, get things done that other people don't want to do, because it's really hard.
Sir, speaking of that, I know you have an important call.
I do.
About 10 minutes, so I think we're gonna wrap up questions now. And so thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for
Absolutely.
a very intriguing presentation.
Thank you. And shoot resumes over to my email and give me feedback on the talk, and I'd love to try to see if there's anything I can do better next time.
And we won't have a seminar next week. It'll be 2 weeks from Monday. We'll have Ahmed Hassan from Oak Ridge National Laboratory. We'll talk about composites manufacturing.
Let's do a little group picture.
Everything that they're inside.